I'm Steve McCausland. I'm spokesman for the Maine Department of Public Safety. To my right is Lieutenant Jeffrey Love of our Major Crimes Division in Augusta. It's his detectives that are investigating the scenes just down the road. And to my left is Sheriff Dale Lancaster from the Somerset County Sheriff's Department, and he will talk about his deputies' involvement. But I will start off with identifying the victims. First victim is Lori Hayden, Lorihayden. She is 52, of Madison. Another victim is her son, Dustin Tuttle, Dustin, Tuttle, Tuttle. He's 25. Another victim is Michael Spaulding, common spelling. He is 57. He lives down the road. And the person wounded along the side of the road is Harvey Austin, whose address is actually Skowhegan. Austin is 57. The gunman who is also dead is 51-year-old Carol Tuttle Jr. This is Lori Hayden's husband, Dustin Tuttle's father. What we're investigating at this point is a domestic violence killing of both Miss Hayden and of Dustin. The connection as to why the other two men were shot are questions we really don't have an answer to at this point, but we're going to do our best to try to get those answers. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sheriff Lancaster to talk about the involvement of his deputies.
Do we know what Harvey Austin's condition is?
Harvey Austin is at Eastern Maine Medical Center. He is being treated for gunshot wounds. Gunshot wounds plural. And we believe that his wounds are not life-threatening.
What was his relationship to everybody, Mr. Austin's?
That's a good question. We don't have that answer. He had driven up to the scene, but I do not know specifically the relationship that he has with anybody else.
Does he live here on the
shooter?
Does he live here on the street?
He lives on River Road in Skowhegan.
What time of day did the incident occur?
Pardon?
What time of day? We heard that the calls were made this morning.
Sheriff's Department got their first call at 7:37. 7:37 this morning.
Is that when the shooting occurred, or was that when the bodies were found?
That is, the shootings had occurred prior to that, yes.
Did you have a relationship with Mr. Spaulding to the rest of these people?
No, that's another question we really don't have an answer to, other than he lives just, he doesn't live adjacent, but he lives just down the road. Yes.
Where was Carol found? Was he at his home, or where on Madison or Russell Road was he this morning?
Carol Tuttle was I'll let the sheriff talk about that aspect, and because that involves Somerset deputies. This is Sheriff Lancaster.
Good afternoon. My name is Sheriff Lancaster. I'm the sheriff of the county. This morning we had 3 deputies involved in a shooting. Chief Deputy James Ross, Detective Michael Ross, and Deputy Joseph Jackson. They confronted Mr. Tuttle this morning. There was a shots exchanged, and Mr. Tuttle is deceased.
So Mr. Tuttle fired him down?
No, he did not. Let me back up. What we do know is that that there was a shooting this morning. The Attorney General is investigating that shooting, and they're early into their investigation. What I do want to let everybody know that is that though the Attorney General's office is investigating this case, as they do in every police shooting, I have total confidence in the performance of my deputies.
Sheriff Lancaster, I had understood that the suspect in this case left the crime scene and then returned. Do you have any information that could verify that?
So we do know that at one point he did leave and he did come back.
That's Carol Tuttle.
That's correct.
And he's the shooter.
Yes.
That is correct.
Yes.
Sheriff, can you tell us where the shooting of Mr. Tuttle by the deputies occurred
It happened in one of the driveways.
in one of the driveways at the home where Lori Hayden and her
That
son
is
were?
correct.
So there are two locations. We're talking about two residents.
We have two residents involved where this took place.
Yep. Is it, and what are the addresses?
I don't have their physical.
I'll have that in a minute.
Okay.
I don't have their physical address, but they're within very close proximity of each other.
Can you elaborate on the incident that took place between the deputies and Mr. Tuttle that caused them to fire upon him?
So I'm going to have the Attorney General's office complete their investigation, and then more details will be released from that point.
Did Mr. Tuttle fire at the police officers?
That question was asked before. We're going to let the Attorney General's office investigators do their investigation, and we'll have further as
And what's the
Can-
relation?
What is the step?
investigation continues.
What is the employment status of the deputies involved at this point?
So in every time there is a police shooting, police officers are put on an administrative paid leave while the investigation is complete.
And what's the relationship between the two deputies with the same last name of Ross?
Father, son,
And the father is
the chief deputy,
the name, which is James.
James Ross.
And
you
which
talk about-
officer has been put on administrative leave?
All three have been put on administrative leave at this point.
Can you talk about the original call that came in, why your deputies were out here, that sort of thing?
We received a call at 7:37 this morning of possible gun shooting, and that's why we had our response that we did.
Where was Mike? Was he at the home that the Tuttles lived in, or was he at Harvey Austin's? Mike Spaulding.
So Mike Spaulding, as Mr. McCausland has just stated, did not live in the same home as Lori Hayden and Dustin Tuttle
Where was he found today? Where was he?
at his home.
So we're talking 3 houses, or I'm sorry.
I'll get into that detail.
Okay.
Hold off on that, and I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Was any of the officers injured or wounded?
None of the officers were injured.
How are your officers doing?
As you would expect, anybody or any person that was involved in a traumatic situation.
Do we know how many